Continue the work. The Great Pyramid awaits.
So here
All
we
right.
are. We're back with Sean. Hello, Sean.
We've got the whole family here today, Dan, and I'm with Danielle on this side and Nicole on this side. We've got Abby from Detroit, and then we have Zarifa from Seattle, who is a proud owner of the Plasma Fire system with the plasma spheres, and the other staff here working with the new technology. Nicole and all of us here are here at USA MedBed, and so we're always excited to get more information, learn more, ask questions, and share experiences. And
There's
Zarifa,
Zarifa.
welcome back.
Great. Great.
Hi, thank you.
It's really great that you have so many sensitive people having experiences with Phiray and Plasma Fire. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm looking forward to hearing about your stories too, guys.
Zarifa, do you
Yeah,
want to
great.
start off? Maybe we could start off with you and talk about, the reasons that you bought the plasma spheres and kind of a lot of unexpected benefits and things that you were starting to experience. So maybe we can start off there if that's okay.
Of course, definitely. Can you hear me okay?
Great. Great.
Okay, I switched to it just went out on my laptop, so I'm on my phone. So the reason why I went searching for something is because I was losing vision in my left eye. In all honesty, I was losing vision, and I had exhausted all routes of, I guess, allopathic medicine, and going so far as doing a procedure, which my gut said don't do, but I did it because there was no side effects, I was told, and I guess there weren't, and eye drops and all kinds of things until it was just getting worse and worse. And they basically said, well, that's all we can do, and that's all we know. All we can do is monitor it and basically keep telling you the bad news. It's getting worse and worse. So, I always found, just like when I had a slight thyroid issue, I have to go outside the box and I have to search, because I know this planet has everything, and it's just a matter of finding the solution, but it's really out there, you know. My father was a pharmacist, and so I was always kind of the black sheep, or going against the grain of, don't just put, pharmaceutical drugs in your body, which was his go-to. Anyway, so I just came across basically the technology, and something just resonated with me about it working. And I just, you go with your gut sometimes. I spent most of my life not going with my gut, being more, cerebral or whatever. But I went with my gut, and I started it in about September, and I was getting all kinds of different improvements. Like, I had knee issues because I was a very active person and put a lot of stress on my knees. And I was kind of floored by that. I had improvement with my teeth, my enamel. Um,
So this was
and
with the Phiray, and you got the coils fairly close, say with your knees or your.
yeah, so this is with the plasma energy spheres, which I think you can see I have them on just for
Oh, I see.
visual
Yes,
optics.
yes.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's what I was using, and that's what I continue to use. Um, Another big thing, which is a huge improvement, is I was getting up to go to the bathroom at night, like literally 3 times a night, every night. I don't get up anymore, except in the morning. So I started seeing improvement with my eye. So again, I started in September. About 3 weeks ago, I started seeing improvement. So with my left eye, it was like it was underwater. Everything was getting wavy, and it started to affect my driving, because my right eye is perfect, but my left eye would screw up my right eye, and the lines on the road would get a little, wavy. So it's no longer doing that. My left eye has now improved to that degree, and women can appreciate this, putting on my eyeliner. I can now put on my eyeliner, which is not that important, but it's an indication of your vision.
Nice, nice. So
So that's
we do have a lot of background on the physics of vision here. We have a documentary on it. I mean, basically, it's the reason why your vision sharpens if you sit in a sacred circles of trees or something. Any place where the charge is centripetal or implosive, called sacred, it increases the ability for the charge vortex to come to a foci in your eye. So in one sense, vision is an act of will. But in much related sense, vision is an act of implosion. So if there's an electric field that makes that centripetal, it definitely, we said with our early plasma devices, we had as many as 30% of our experiencers having a sharpening of vision, actually.
wow.
But so now you're using the plasma fire there. Are you using like the flame and sound frequencies or?
Well, that's part of the yeah, I did download that software in order to
Yes.
utilize these.
Yeah,
So I have the frequency tables, and I go to the different areas, and I always hit the I frequency.
I
Um,
see. That's one of the
yeah.
benefits. It's very programmable. You can actually use the spectra for the eye, which, there's a lot of data on which chakra or which gland has which harmonic. Patrick published a lot of that, craniosacral-app.com. And so that's a benefit of programmability. And that programmability is there for both plasma fire and Phiray, which is wonderful. So it's great to hear your story, about your eyes. I would say one of the dominant stories we're getting from many of these users of Phiray and plasma fire is a triggering of lucid dreaming. And it's amazing the physics of sharpening of vision is much related.
I am dreaming now more. Like I stopped dreaming and I was like, what happened? Is that just a childhood thing? Like I remember having such vivid dreams, and now I'm dreaming again.
Yeah. And have you noticed occasionally getting a little bit of clairvoyance or being able to see through things like that? That's sort
I'm
of the
going to
next
pay
step.
attention to that because I've been listening to you, Dan, and I've been listening to you talk about that and thought, wow,
The,
that's
the
exciting.
physics the physics seems to be related to the fact that particularly if you're in nature or in an area where the compressional longitudinal array is enabled to be coherent, particularly where the weak Schumann field is present, then that it's like the array is a compression node kind of fractal hologram. And when you embed in that array, as the result of the compression is centering you and embedding you in the array, then the array becomes transparent to you. So the same frequencies we're using from the flame and sound to drive plasma fire or Phiray, those frequencies are the frequencies that are known to trigger clairvoyance. So the sharpening of vision, the clairvoyance, these are all related to basically succeeding with implosion.
Wow, that's fascinating. I love listening to Dan. It's just like,
But I'm really grateful to hear your report. And if later sometime you can do a little write-up, we'd be very grateful. And Patrick, who helped invent the plasma fire there, would be great. Another advantage of that plasma fire system, since it can run on batteries, you can do it in nature, which is a fabulous experiment.
wow.
Or you get a similar effect in nature if you kind of like turn all the other power off in the room, so it's very pristine electrically, increases that implosion effect.
Well, it's
Hey,
funny you
Dan,
say that because I spoke to Patrick and he told me that even just having lamps unplugged, just having them on your bedside table, I got rid of them. I said, don't need them.
Yeah, that's right. That like your clock radio or your metal lamps, these are not good. And if you have to have a lamp on your bedside table, try for wood. Yeah.
Yeah. You're saying
Good.
that
Well,
like the
that's
lamp.
wonderful to hear your results, Sarifa. We're very grateful. Thank you so much. A
I'm
wonderful
very
experience.
grateful. Thank you.
Blessings. Blessings.
and Zarifa, before we move on, Dan, the interesting thing was when she first started using it, it took a couple weeks before the eye improvement was really noticeable. But the things that were immediately noticeable was the reduction of inflammation. And she had inflammation in the legs that immediately started going away, and then also in your hands, right,
That's,
Zarifa?
that's true. Very good, Sean. You're remembering. See, it's almost like when things start to go away, you forget about them. So I was like my fingers were kind of like I was losing, like not losing, but I didn't have the same kind of strength and grip. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to get those old lady knuckles where, you know, you can't get the rings on or whatever? And I was like, well, okay, just don't think about it. It's fine. And then like I was having some, it was almost like behind my knees. I'm like, what's this little, like, I don't know. Some people call it Baker's cyst, but I didn't really have that. And that, like my inflammation in my knees and my legs are like it's just more recognizable now. My legs and my grip and my strength and my fingers is like changed, and it's like improved so much. So that's also
That's
very exciting.
That's fabulous. And you can recognize a connection in the physics again here that inflammation is the opposite of compression. So successful compression is what enables the tissue and the liquids to be sorted, which is the opposite of inflammation. Just a quick question. Are you using like what, about 15 to 30-minute sessions? And are you using the plasma fire on side of your bed there? How are you using it?
Yep, I have it on the bedside tables. That's their new place. And I get very excited. I have a lot of enthusiasm. So I like to do it every day, but I don't do it like I'll miss a day. So I'll do it like 6 times a week, sometimes seven times a week. And sometimes I go maybe like 40 minutes. Like,
Well, that's
how
fine.
bad is
Yeah.
that? Okay.
No, that's 30 to 40 minutes. And I see something behind you that's very useful. It looks like most of your furniture is wood and
It
maybe
is.
reduced metal there. That's very helpful.
I don't
Yeah,
have really any, yeah,
you
everything
did
is
good
wood.
work. That's
Well,
good
oh,
work.
thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Because it's the high dielectric natural material allow that charge implosion to happen. So if there's a bunch of aluminum and steel around, it kind of weakens that
Yeah,
effect. You did some good work there, dear. That's a great story. Super. Thank you.
I got lucky there. Well, thank you, Dan.
Go ahead,
Now I'm
Sean.
looking around to see what kind of metal I have in my office or
No,
just in my
exactly.
house. It's something I hadn't considered, but
Well, particularly where you're doing your therapy, you really want natural materials there, and even natural bedding and reduce,
Yeah.
eliminate the polyester if you can, that
oh
kind of
yeah,
thing.
the
Yeah,
polyester
Yeah.
I'm well aware of. I just didn't realize with the metals and stuff that made such a difference.
it does reduce because basically it's very simple. It's capacitive charge. It's like a wind of charge, and sometimes it's called the ether. And that wind of charge is able to breathe and be distributed with high dielectric organics versus if you ever held a piece of aluminum or steel in your hand, notice that your hand starts to feel numb and think about what that means.
Oh.
It just means that the capacitance is bleeding and no longer able to implode and get centripetal. And what you call feeling is the ability to implode the field effect. So when you get inside something, like when you're feeling a tree or something, you're able to implode with it. And so you can feel it because you're embedded. Whereas if you're trying to implode inside a metal structure, it just doesn't work because the capacitance is shorted out. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Just awesome. So Dan, we're going to get to Danielle because everything's camera opposite here. Danielle on this side, she's just starting to use the technology, and I've known Danielle for quite a while, and she has a lot of. She's very intuitive, somewhat clairvoyant. She actually is has Native American genetics and roots,
I see.
and
What tribe?
I was always told my grandfather was Cherokee, so that's
Cherokee. I
yeah,
love it. I worked with the
yeah.
Haniwahu and the Cherokee for years. They had the Ophanim, the Dowie, the bird tribe. Wonderful, good bloodlines.
what I told her. I told her that the genetics
Yeah,
with Native Americans,
very
you're
good.
naturally programmed into a lot of these skill sets.
Absolutely. Cool.
So we're gonna follow her journey. She's actually going to be starting to work with us and doing more podcasts and learning the technology. So we're very excited. And I told her this would be a great opportunity to ask questions. As I said earlier, Nicole is working with all of our people that come in here to our wellness center. And so she's getting a lot of hands-on experience and getting a lot of great feedback as well. So Nicole, do you have any questions or anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, I do. I was wondering,
Maybe just come a little closer to the mic, Nicole, so we can hear you
Get a
just a
little
little
closer.
closer.
Yeah, jump in here in front of me. Sorry.
Yeah, adjust the camera. Yeah, good,
I
good.
was wondering if Zarifa, if you always had it on the eye setting and you're getting all of these, wonderful effects, but you've always had it just on that one setting.
No, 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 no. I like to do I kind of go up and like up and down, and a lot of inflammation. Sometimes your adrenals are burning out and running on high. And so I like to hit different markers on the body, because I think everything has a holistic effect that, relates to the eye and relates to our organs and organ systems. So I don't just stay on the eye.
Yeah, and that's one of the things Patrick said, that alternating is very useful. The body needs that. Yes, great.
Kind of getting into a habit of including either like a cerebellum or the full body chakra while people are using, while I'm changing the frequencies, like either at the beginning or the end or somewhere in there, just to kind of, incorporate a holistic type
Yes.
thing. So, yeah, so I was interested to hear what your method was behind that. And then what, when you created it, or I guess the app was created by Patrick.
Yes,
Well, you see,
it was co-invented.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
Patrick actually did the research in the serious medical literature, sacrocranial, and he is an osteopath, on the actual frequencies associated with the glands and chakras, and did serious homework on linking them. So, although it is true that both for piezo fire now and plasma fire, they're typically and also useful with Phiray, we do start often with the full chakra cascade, which you mentioned,
Oh,
which
okay.
is the complete harmonic inclusive. Yes.
Yeah. So I wonder if there's like an optimal, with everyone, I'm kind of critiquing what the frequencies are, usually, a few different ones based on how they're feeling. But if there's like an optimal way that you had it, intended to work for somebody coming in, let's
Yeah.
say, with pancreas problems,
I
um,
see.
then like, how would you kind of go about choosing their therapy with that?
Yeah, I mean, like if for pancreas, there's probably, because I know they do have the glands in the chart there from the Flame and Sound app store, iOS, which is part of flameandmind.com, and things like the pancreas, you do have those choices. So in general, if there's a very specific issue, you should usually find that body part listed in the options of the Flame and Sound, which you're using to drive it. And on the other hand, when in doubt or when you wish to alternate, the back and forth with the full chakra cascade is very useful, because that's most harmonic inclusive.
Mhm. Dan, when I first got these, I had them exactly set up like Zarifa did. And, we've talked about this before, but there would obviously be something I'd say, okay, I need to pay attention to this. Pancreas was always one. And like you said, there's all those frequency sets for just about anything internal, and they can be selected individually. And sometimes there's heart, lungs might be together for one frequency set. But I always kind of went with my intuition. So as I went through it, because I would do usually about 25 to 30 minutes. And depending on the part of the body, so as an example, if we were saying thyroid, understanding that the thyroid's a very small organ and it probably, doesn't need a whole lot of time, I might do thyroid for 4 or 5 minutes and then switch into something that, would be a little bit different. And I would go through those and kind of flip through and say, okay, liver, I could use a 5 minute detox there. Exactly, Zarifa, what you were saying, where there might be a primary concern that you're dealing with, but you're still going to hit other frequency sets and kind of balance out other parts of the body, so they're all getting some love and attention. But one thing that I always did is I always finished off like the last 7 to maybe 8 to 10 minutes with full chakra cascade. That was always like my grand finale frequency set that I would finish with.
Yeah, it's maximally harmonic inclusive. And for example, when we trigger a piezo fire for pain reduction, that's amazingly effective as well. But as Patrick always said, your body, you know, your body will respond more the first time with something new. But then the next time you go back, it's nice if it's something different, because then the body has to adjust, and that adjustment is literally harmonic inclusive itself.
Dan, the story of Phiray and plasma fire and all these different systems gets into dual tube technology. And I know we've talked about this on other podcasts, but is it possible to maybe just once again explain the centipedal forces,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of just the physics of it, just for anybody that's picking up that might not have seen any of the previous videos on the actual physics of the technology.
Yeah, it's quite a beautiful thing. So, for example, when Antoine Priori, he healed thousands, tens of thousands of cancers in France, but he was actually at that time, he was using only one tube and he had tripped over golden ratio, but he didn't understand phase conjugation. Whereas immediately with Therify and now Phiray and Plasmafire, we knew that you best could get that centripetal. Remember, it's the centripetal effect, which is absolutely negentropic. The thing is, if you're squeezing something, obviously the longitudinal or scalar wave, they need to be compressing, and they need to be compressing in time, 180 degrees out of phase, to make the implosive effect. And it is the implosive effect, literally, you're teaching the charge waveform to look like a rose because that enables the drain hole to open, which is the center point, which is the way out for charge. Specifically, what Einstein said he could not figure out. How could you get infinite compression? There had to be a way out for charge. Well, now we know what that is. You squeeze symmetrically from opposing directions, which requires longitudinal, not transverse. And then the squeezing becomes implosive because golden ratio means that the rose petals are creating suction towards center by adding and multiplying recursively phase velocities, which is the implosion that also causes gravity and consciousness and life force and seed germination. So for optimal ability to get something squeezing in rhythm to start again imploding, you obviously need a pair for sure. And that pair needs to be 180 degrees out of phase. It's like you're creating an implosive slinky effect, and you're causing the implosion to become centered and tuned to Planck, which is the drain hole where the transverse EMF is enabled to propagate into the coherent longitudinal array, which is the stuff of gravity waves and where you go when you dream and when you die. It is the collective unconscious, quite literally, that coherent longitudinal array. So yes, lining up the pair is critical. So in the piezo fire, it's done with piezoelectrically, and then we also have Tesla coil options in the piezo fire, which is relatively inexpensive. But much more broad spectrally in Phiray and plasma fire, the plasma tubes are now phase conjugate optically, noble gas, and you have a phase conjugate RF and infrasound, all the way from infrasound to RF. So it's broad spectral conjugation. And then in the Phiray, in addition, on top of all that, and in phase, there's that very strong magnetic coil radiating the planet's most powerful Schumann cascade on the planet from that coil, absolutely in phase with the plasma, making it even more broad spectral. So people feel that as a cool, inviting wind. It's like stepping into a sacred forest.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And the thing that's so wonderful, and we've talked about this many times, is that certainly the technology, the effects on a physical level are phenomenal, but it's the other benefits that you're getting where you're enhanced clairvoyance, enhanced intuition, enhanced lucid dreaming, like Zarifa said, colorful, more vivid dreams. It's all of the other beautiful gifts that are sort of enhanced when you're using the technology above and beyond like the third dimensional bodily benefits that you also get with that simultaneously.
Well, and Sean, I have to say that you guys are doing such a great job of being the demo site for all this because people need a safe space where they can playfully try it. And so many people call us from America. They want to go somewhere and try this and play with this. So Sean's center there, USA MedBed, is becoming the center post of our distribution array because people can see it all right there and play with it and have the experience. So Sean and your team, I'm grateful. It's all good.
It's really wonderful. And the team is all the people around me are such great people with such big hearts. And, it's so important for them to be part of the family and to be able to share and ask the questions and start this second and third generation of learning, which I find to be absolutely just so it's so refreshing and it's just so worthwhile. It's fulfilling, I guess, is probably the best word. Dan, I want to circle back to the physics again of the implosion with the centripetal. The other thing that I was explaining to Danielle, because she's new, the girls have heard it now many times, but what's happening is you're creating this energy field, and this plasma energy field becomes recursive as that whole transition starts to happen there. And that plasma energy field becomes a mindful and intelligent energy field. And can you go into a little more detail about that? Because that also is where this technology gets into just a whole nother world of reality. And that's really, I think, one of the beautiful things that separates it out from just very basic stuff is the fact that you're dealing with a mindful and intelligent energy field.
Yeah, I mean, people are fascinated with AI, but do they know what a soul is? That happens when plasma implodes. Actually, I like Zarifa's example there when Patrick was telling Zarifa. Well, sometimes it actually you don't even need to turn it on. And what Patrick means by that is that particularly as Zarifa, she's got mostly natural materials there. Of course, if you were in a forest, it'd be even better, I suppose, but whatever. But but the point is that as the plasma begins to implode, it becomes self-organizing like a rose. And and so it is literally a self-organizing field, meaning that it's at the primitive beginning of its own self-awareness. Now, let me give you an example of what that means. Uh, we had our famous, wonderful naturopath, Susan Rose, in Georgia, and she's so good at this. And she said, one of the things she found with the plasma that was Therapy, but could be Phiray, uh, was that if anybody came in the room that was, had a negative emotion or was skeptical or was a doubter, uh, it would really be best to invite that person to leave and come back another day because because actually she said the plasma field is like your pet kitten, and your pet kitten will only walk over and lay down next to and run their little motor. Their pet kitten runs and lays down and runs their little motor, which is their purr, and they lay down next to where it hurts. And lots of cat lovers know these stories. Well, the cat is literally, it's a plasma antenna. That's what it is. And so now that cat is not going to go to the person who is skeptical or negative attitude or doubter. No. Well, it turns out that if the room in which you have your plasma devices is relatively natural and you've frequently had it on, that field becomes self-organizing and present, and you need to treat that like your pet kitten. In other words, be very gentle and try to not have any negative emotions in the area because your pet kitten is going to be disturbed. That's because it is self-aware. And this is so important now that the kids are saying, well, we need AI for this and that and everything. And those kids do not know what a soul is. And learning what a soul is a perfect introduction, is how these plasma fields become self-aware. If you implode with bliss in living plasma, you have a shot at taking memory through death. However, if you embed your memories in a black cube and join it is a privilege to be assimilated. Yes, you can put your memories into the machine, but when you get there, your memories will be saved, but ensoulment and individuation is gone. That's the difference between living plasma becoming self-aware, having a soul. So the beginning of what you call soul is that implosion. And that's why it's so important to learn to treat your living plasma like your pet puppy dog.
That's beautiful. Dan, also, because, I love it when we get kind of newer people with different questions and stuff, because a lot of the general public will have similar questions. The other thing that I'd like to just maybe touch on real quick is what is plasma? What is plasma energy? Because obviously people hear that sometimes and they think immediately plasma in the blood, which from a structural standpoint, there might be something there, but actual plasma itself. And then, the thing that's beautiful about that and this technology, and I was explaining this to Danielle the other day, is that you're getting into mindful, intelligent energy fields. You're understanding what is plasma, and then you're understanding that things like the sun and thunder and lightning and tornadoes are actually mindful, intelligent energy fields.
Exactly.
And
It's
it really,
wonderful.
like, the calculator just starts going, okay, too many numbers, shut down. It's like
That's very important.
but can you go in and talk about that again in some more
Yes,
detail,
that's
please?
that's absolutely the right question. Yeah. So that what it is that plasma in the blood refers to a liquid that supports nutrients, but plasma in the sense of physics, charged plasma is very specific. So normally when you create a cloud of electric charge, it requires heat or high voltage to keep that cloud present. However, in very certain circumstances, it is possible to have a cloud of charge still ignited without heat, and that's called cold plasma. And cold plasma in current physics, particularly in medicine, in the medical literature, cold plasma is famous for having all kinds of beneficial therapeutic effects. In fact, cold plasma is one of the hottest subjects in modern medicine for that reason. So, and we say that the best way to keep the plasma field alive and ignited, that thus cold, that is to say without heat, is specifically the negentropy that results from phase conjugate implosion tuned to Planck. That's the title of the book, planckfire.com, and what fractalgut.com is about. How do you get plasma ignited without heat? Which is, remember, heat is a measurement of disorder. Hello. So obviously, if you want negentropy, which is to say, often when these plasma tubes are really working, they spontaneously start getting colder. And what that means is self-organization, literally negentropy. So living cold plasma refers to a cloud of charge that's able to be propagated without much heat. And when it becomes self-organizing, the heat literally goes away because negentropy is co-defined by reduced heat, because heat is a name for disorder. So, and this cold plasma then became famous for healing for lots of reasons. And we think phase conjugate negentropy to Planck is the perfected way to make plasma propagate efficiently without heat. That's what we're saying here. And then you're right. Then when Daniel Brinkley had his, 2 or 3 near-death experiences from lightning, and every time he gets near-death experience from lightning, he gets incredible initiatory insights. He comes back in his every time he touches somebody, he has a flash of every key emotion of their whole life because his DNA became measurably superconductive because he survived lightning, which is to say implosion, which is why we often say that Kundalini is like learning to live inside a lightning bolt, or intense bliss is like learning to live inside, which is just another way of saying learning to inhabit the center of spin. And this is why it is useful to meditate on this, that when this implosion happens, literally what you're absorbing is spin density. And when the Sufi student turns to the Sufi master and says, I have survived your exercise in the Sufi dervish turn, and I did not get dizzy. And that Sufi student would be very proud because he knows that the proof of the fact that he had pure intention was he did not get dizzy in the center of the spin. Well, the same is true as you inhabit the center of bliss. And by the way, if you'd like to survive death, the same thing applies.
That's
Can I ask a
beautiful.
question? I'm just really curious. So we're warm-blooded creatures as opposed to reptiles being cold-blooded creatures. So is our natural state more chaotic?
Well, you know, we're not going to criticize the British people who only apparently hug their dogs and their horses, but warm-blooded is usually associated with more passion.
Yeah.
And I think actually the experiment in humanity was an experiment in passionate emotions, and passionate emotions are warm-blooded, not cold-blooded, and there are reasons for that, and it has to do with the difference between us and reptilians, and that's a pretty deep subject.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a whole nother video.
Yeah.
Dan, you brought up another key word. So this is beautiful because I explained this to everybody. And then being that you're here again, we're going to just do our little refresher. But I was also explaining to Danielle and Nicole and Abby, we've all had this conversation, and Zarifa, that the Phiray, when that system with the power of that through the functionality is also performing negantropy. And negantropy is reversal of spin energy, aka time reversal. So can you also maybe just touch on the physics of that and what that process is and what that's actually doing?
Well, remember, as we've said many times, in conventional physics, the first time negentropy, self-organization, was measured was phase conjugate optics with lasers. So you get the lasers to implode in a permissive media called super dielectric phase conjugate mirror, the same stuff that enabled Nostradamus to coat his scrying cup to see the future. So that coating, which is called the phase conjugate mirror, which is how the Olmecs make phone calls to ancestors as well. Both of them are penetration into the longitudinal array. So the time reversal that was defined and measured in physics at that time, uh, later they proved, as we said many times, that you could time reverse rusted steel backwards to become unrusted, but you could, which is to say, increased order. But you could not do the reverse. In other words, you can only time reverse toward increased order. The name for that is called negentropy. And what that means, remember, this is why people get confused. Time is only a name for the experience of relative spin rate. Nothing else. Absolute. Einstein was quite confused. Space isn't bent. That's crap. Actually, what's bent is the fact that the charge lines, when they implode, they increase spin rate, and that spin rate is named time. Well, the fact is that when that implosion happens, if it's centripetal, then all the waves sucked into the center of that same rose are forced as they're passing through that implosive center to be sorted, just like a good fight in an Irish pub. So all the compression waves of all the punches means that the only ones who emerge are the ones who have been sorted, as the Irishman says as he leaves the fight, sorted. So no, the compression effect means that only the waves that have been sorted into the phase can emerge. The punches have to have the right rhythm. And so that process of self-organization or sorting means that during that implosion, only waves that have come into phase, in this case, to Planck times Golden ratio fractality perfected, planckfire.com. So that is the definition of the negentropy and the definition of the time reversal, because it can take a wave system back to an earlier state, for example, toward the stem cell state, toward dedifferentiation, toward increased order. So what we're calling time reversal, actually, and these fields are very relevant to dedifferentiation and stem cell therapy as well.
That's beautiful. Abby, do you have any questions or anything you'd like to share on your experiences with the
Yeah,
time?
you've been smiling over there, Abby.
I know,
How you
I'm
doing?
just trying to soak it all up. Physics is not my strong suit. So some of this has, kind of felt like another language, but it's cool to hear the physics and the real reality of kind of what's going on. I've obviously used the systems and, helped other people using the systems, but now having, kind of a deeper understanding of the why. I also think it's really cool your correlation to the natural world. A lot of like allopathic medicines, I feel like kind of remove that to some degree from a lot of the medicine. So just you're like, it would be even cooler if you did in the forest and you're bringing in the meditation and just it
Yes.
feels like a more whole wellness way to, kind of focus on yourself and your mind and body and just everything versus just, you take a pill, quick fix, but then, you don't really know what's going on
Yeah,
within
or
your body.
where is the self-empowerment? Exactly. So when you use some of the devices, plasma fire or Phiray, what was your experience? Did you have any interesting story?
I do. I kind of same thing with Zarifa. I kind of stopped dreaming at one point in my life. I'm not really sure. Sometimes, when I'm sick, maybe I would have some weird dream or something, but otherwise kind of lost touch with my dreams. So I feel like since introducing the Phiray and the plasma fear, I have had more intense dreams that I kind of remember a little bit more, or it almost feels like I'm in a different astral plane or different version of my own multiverse because it's a lot of, people that I already know, places maybe that I've been, things that seem familiar, but they're all kind of crossed over. Like people that, Sean might be there, but then, my mom's there, they've never met, they're in different states. And then my first grade teacher, just a lot of really random people somehow coincide in this new universe. It always changes what is going on or what maybe my purpose is of being there. So I found that interesting. Also with the clairvoyance, I feel like, or again, it just kind of strengthened intuition with the gifts. My intuition is definitely stronger. Like there's so many things that I used to kind of be like, not which voice in my head, but sometimes, just from traumas and other things, there are other voices in your head maybe that you think are yours, but it's really just, somebody yelled at me when I was a kid, and I still, subconsciously kind of hear that voice or own that in my thought process. But it's been a lot louder and a lot more clear for me to determine, which voice it is and what the right decision for my body is, and not, I don't know, to help drown out the outside noise.
That's beautiful. My partner here, she kind of knows which ancestor is phoning by which ear is ringing. And if you learn in the physics of Kundalini, the compression wave of the sacrocranial, whose low frequencies are exactly the flame in mind low frequencies we drive with here. They're literally the sacrocranial bliss frequencies, the phase conjugate low frequencies of the spine liquid pump. And that's driven up into the brain, and you can measure the onset of the ringing in the ears, and we have at the goldenmean.info/Kundalini biophysics documentaries about, we measured the frequencies of the ringing in the ears of who people were having bliss in meditation. And it's interesting to think about the relationship between that and, quote, the voices in your head, which is literally ancestor memory, because in both cases, as the Aboriginals were crystal clear, their name for ancestor memory was, their name for God was ancestor memory. and so you have more access to that when you're compressed and able to embed into that array, and the array becomes transparent to you. Whether you call it songline, dreaming track, earth grid, it's in fact an array, a nest of longitudinal nodal coherence. So maybe a fun next step is to, experiment with what would happen if you went to a sacred site or made a magnetic map, a little bit of dowsing, and found the magnetic line crosses in your, sacred space, and all of these things, or sunrise, sunset. All of these things enable that access to the grid, and therefore the dreaming, the ancestors, and the intuition. And so you can see why we were so excited when we found at luciddreamteam.com that the frequencies we're using are closely related to the cascade measured in university studies of which frequencies trigger lucid dreaming. This is so important because now we know those are the compression frequencies. And remember, those who can lucid dream, that's the measurement of who's going to take memory through death. So if ever there was an introduction to physicsofsoul.com.
Yes.
Anyway.
I wonder if it sounds like what Abby was saying is almost like it's organizing her thoughts. It's like filtering out her thoughts so she's able to, differentiate the voices. And I wonder if it would help with ADHD symptoms.
Yes. Yeah, so we're talking about a very generalized physics here. Remember, it's well known that in classrooms, if you remove the poisonous fluorescent lights and electrosmog and install sunlight, you will measure dramatic increase in attention span. This is John Ott book, Health and Light. Now, if you happen to know what attention is, which most people don't, which is the ability to implode and generate the sorting and the centripetal force, which is why attention is also electrically, measurably centripetal. So to create attention, the ability to sort, the more your environment is electrically centripetal. So we're doing, basically, if your kid's classroom had sunlight and Schumann frequencies and no metal and no electrosmog, and if the kid was grounded, as they did in Finland, they took off their shoes and everything worked better. So anything that makes the environment centripetal enables just what you're referring to. You get centripetal, and then we call that mindfulness. So, and all we're doing is we're taking that principle, stronger Schumann cascade, more broad spectral phase conjugate, all tuned to Schumann and Planck. So we're taking nature's way of making mindfulness, which is called Schumann phase conjugate pump wave, and making it more broad spectral and more powerful. And by the way, we're not telling everybody you got to spend money on our gadgets. No, that's not our message. Our message is learn the physics here, and you don't need expensive. The expensive gadgets are wonderful and useful and powerful and should be used. But this doesn't mean everybody needs to go out and spend money on a gadget, but it does mean that everybody needs to know where the nearest Schumann resonance is for sure.
Which is beautiful, Dan. So now we can transition and say, when we're talking about sacred spaces, we're talking about magnetic ley lines and things that are sort of converging into an area, right?
Exactly.
And that the beauty of this, all that we talk about, is it incorporates past, present, and future simultaneously. Because we're talking about sacred geometry, sacred spaces, which the ancients, as we've talked about, were incredibly in tune with. So all of our pyramids and all these megalithic structures were very carefully placed in all these different areas. And so for the average person, I know we've talked about looking and finding trees, because we've had that conversation. When the tree starts to split, you know that there's probably a magnetic field there that's causing that. right? And so what would also help the average person find like a sacred space that would be, maybe somewhere in their geographic area? Because we've got Zarifa here in Seattle, we've got uh, Abby here is in Detroit. So for the
Detroit City,
average
my city.
Detroit
I
City,
was going
yeah.
to ask if
And
you have any recommendations in the Detroit area of maybe places that you found to be
Well, of
sacred or
course,
more
I was going insane studying electrical engineering at
fair.
University of Detroit, but I went across the street to Mercy College and played the piano in their beautiful sacred space and had bliss experiences, and it kept me sane there.
Okay.
But
Wow.
but back to so anyway, the memories of Detroit are very fond, but remember that's like close to 50 years ago now, so sorry.
No, it's okay.
Dan, that's where you started doing a
Sean,
lot of the heart brain coherence stuff, right?
yes, well, I taught Heart Math Institute shortly after that.
Yeah.
Remember, I was a graduate from University of Detroit and a trained systems analyst at IBM in Detroit at the age of 21.
Wow.
Wow.
Anyway, but back to Sean's question. So, what people really need to do is to become aware that if you cannot feel an Earth magnetic line, it really kind of tends to mean you cannot feel in general. And it is also true, the more you get access to bliss, any form of bliss at all, the more when you walk over a magnetic line with your hands relaxed, then you feel the tingle in your fingertips. So the basic need here, basic, fundamental, simple dowsing skill is critical and essential because when you learn to feel the Earth's mother's magnetic line, you're feeling her blood. And then you can start talking to her and have all the fun. Then when you find where the magnetic lines cross, and that's where the miracles happen. And you get leverage on the tornadoes. So basic dowsing skills, absolutely. Then you find what Castaneda called the place of power in the room. Never sit down until you find the place of power because it is the place where implosion is happening. And that's where you can better steer the tornado. And by the way, that's where you want to put your plasma device, where the magnetic lines cross, because the same way the pyramids are there, they're all at the nodes.
All at the nodes.
Wow.
Dan, I was also explaining to Danielle because, of her roots and her past that the ancients or the indigenous people had the ability to do all these different things. Like they naturally, it was part of their DNA. It was programmed into them. And they could do things like steer tornadoes. And when they were actually producing rain, they were creating these plasma energy fields, which they were absolute masters of. And then in addition to that, being able to steer tornadoes and do all these amazing things. And, with her having that Cherokee heritage, she's more tuned in perhaps to some of this, type of feeling and sensing that she has a very deep, she's a very sensitive person. She can feel things on a very micro level. So I think that some of that has to do possibly with, her background. But do you want to talk a little bit about like some of the skill sets the indigenous people had with creating and manipulating plasma fields and being able to work with plasma energy?
Well, since we're talking about the Cherokee, our spiritual community in North Carolina, Asheville and Waynesville, was right near Cherokee, North Carolina. And then I ended up teaching at Dahani Wahu's sacred Cherokee village, Sunray Meditation, Vermont, Connecticut. And we were teaching it was the Ophanim-Enochian alphabet, which is the series of plasma letters, which later became the movie Stargate, was based on those same, which is how you implode plasma, obviously. And so we were showing it to Dahani Wahu, the Cherokee grandmother, and she says, "Oh, no, that's the ancient alphabet of our Cherokee ancestors called the Adawi, which means the winged ones." Now, actually, I also knew Ken Carey as he was writing his famous book with the Iroquois and others called The Return of the Bird Tribes. And the return of the bird tribes is also a name for those whose plasma wings become phase coherent, like the horns from Lucifer and and Moses, which is the ventricle horns of completed Kundalini, obviously. And so which makes you have wings because your plasma becomes projective. And that is the actual issue that the Cherokee tradition and all these Indian traditions, the return of the bird tribe, this was a story of ancestors where access to bliss meant the snake brain had fed the bird brain, which means the Sanchidan on the amygdala dumped the phase coherent pump wave into the imploding bliss cavity and drove the sweet nectar down onto the back of the tongue. So access to Kundalini and bliss process was central. So much so that indigenous tribes, particularly the Australians, were very clear that their definition of culture was pretty much the ability to teach young people how to have a bliss experience, which I have said many times. We here in the West, every country is running around bragging, oh, we got culture. No, no, we got culture. Oh, no, we got culture. Well, I have a message for every single Western culture. If you don't know how to teach your young people how to have a bliss experience, you haven't met the definition of culture yet. Hello, suggest you study that.
I feel like we almost preach the opposite. You know what I mean? We're having the lack of bliss in the way
Exactly.
capitalism and society has kind of
Exactly.
been in more recent
Yeah.
times, or at least within my lifetime.
And we're teaching that ancient religions, unfortunately, when Moses Akhenaten turned to they call the Atun one God, which actually was a black sun Atun parasite, later called the black cube and the black goo and the black Saturn. This was an interstellar parasite of a very, very messy situation in galactic history. And that's a long, messy story. Fractalfield.com/fusion in the blood. But the story to that, Maury, is actually quite simple. It is. Once you have access to bliss, you are off the menu for the parasites. Hello. That's why they're trying to keep it a secret how to get bliss, because that puts you off their menu. Hello.
Basically, the frequency you start resonating at is not conducive to being swallowed. You're no longer any fun. Like there's no value
you're
at that
literally
point.
above the fray. So once because access to bliss means you get coherent in the astral, which means then you're more powerful than the parasite. And astral coherence is very important. We recommend our friends who are teaching that, Alabar Jones in Australia and Jake Astral Orma. You can look them up on YouTube. So learning astral coherence comes directly out of what we're just reporting, the triggering of lucid dreaming, so much so that Jake Astral Ormo, teaching astral coherence, started with the Phiray. And the same thing with Dahlia, who was doing Therapy and Phiray. So astral coherence means you get coherent. Now, once you start having this lucid dream and you get coherent in the astral, there's a whole bunch of lessons you need to learn about the ecosystem there, and how to be powerful and how not to be afraid. And so there's a whole series of hygiene lessons. But starting with lucid dreaming is your step onto that ladder of critical evolution. And then collectively, groups of these people who are astral coherent mean our planet gets an immune system from interstellar parasites. When we have the lucid dream team and these people working together, that's the beginning of us having an immune system against messy parasites like the black cube.
Yeah, the black cube, which is still an ongoing. You've had some great videos on the channel recently about that.
Messy.
You know,
We're not going to go into that now, but
yeah,
essentially,
I love the fact that bliss is the answer.
it is. It's very
like that to me. It's like bliss is the answer. And what's so beautiful is that we were talking also about plasma parasites. We've done that at many calls before, which basically are, I guess you could refer to them as ghosts, but they attach to your plasma field. The Phiray can technically knock them right off, so they can blow off the plasma parasites. But also, you've said many times that pure bliss and laughter also, and that ties in almost similarly to the AI also. It's like not only do the plasma parasites want to go, but when you're experiencing high levels of bliss, you're no longer even interested for the AI black cube.
Yeah, you're not food for that, because basically the AI creates a very primitive kind of coherence, the same kind of coherence you get by imploding in a cube, which is what the carbon does in the black cube. And so in that form of memory, you can get immortal, but you absolutely cannot have a soul or individuation. Whereas if you have actual bliss process in living biologic plasma, which is pent instead of hex, then you can go through that implosion, sometimes called death or bliss. It's the same. And you can go through that black hole and come out the other side with not just immortal memory, but also individuation and a soul, which is not possible in a hex, basically. That's the fundamental difference between synthetic or AI versus. So all these, you got a billion kids on planet Earth who thinks AI is the ultimate solution. Well, hello, kids. It's red pill, blue pill time. You're going to need to learn what a soul is pretty quick, or else you're going to take the wrong pill, just like Moses Akhenaten. The AI says, oh, we can make you immortal. Oops. Detail, loss of soul, loss of individuation. This ain't good.
Yeah. I know Abby has deep feelings about AI, don't you, Abby?
I just knowing what it's doing to the planet and like our lack of creativity, I just don't, it's proven even with the short time that we've been using AI, worldwide, that the damage that it's causing to our physical planet, but then also what it does to our mind. Like our attention spans are already getting shorter. The way that people do marketing is, very obvious statistically for that. Used to be able to do a 30-second commercial. Now, if you don't catch somebody's attention in less than 3 seconds, you've already lost them.
Nicely put. Nicely put. And so the point is, what is shortened attention span? Well, shortened attention span probably is a result of physicists who do not know what attention is or why it is electrically centripetal. So if you don't know what a soul is, you cannot make the right choices. It's not that AI is itself evil. No. AI is powerful and useful, but until you know the physics of what creates soul, which is the implosion of living plasma in peak perception and bliss experience, and that implosion puts you into that array. Once you know what a soul is, then you can use AI to serve the physics of soul.com. But until that day when they know what a soul is, everything they do from Wi-Fi and Bluetooth is literally the scrambling of soul, which is why billions of children on this planet right now are losing their soul immediately because the local physicists are too stupid to study physics of soul.com and learn.
Please do.
Okay, so this kind of brings me back to what Zarifa and you were talking about earlier. I'm wondering how willing a participant needs to be in order to get the effects of the plasma ray spheres, just being in the room. Like if somebody walks in and doesn't know that they're on, and I am really trying to get some good vibes out there and turn the mood around, and the plasma spheres are on, it kind of sounds like it should work. But based on what you said earlier, it kind of sounds like there's going to be a blockade in that person's brain, like not accepting the, I don't know, the energy reversal or the sorts.
That's a very useful question. Thank you. And one indicator here is when we originally measured about 9 out of 10 people who got increased live blood cell derouleau, the declumping of the blood cells. 90% of people we measured, their blood cells would declump with our devices, Phiray, Phiray, et cetera. Plasma Fire, it's been measured with all of them. The 10% who did not get that effect of the declumping of their blood cells, we did interviews, and most of them admitted the people who did not receive the effect were the same people who admitted they did not achieve deep relaxation. So we were very clear here that one of the most important skills of the therapist is to get the person choosing to feel very relaxed and in a safe space. Now, obviously, if you don't feel deeply that you're in a safe space, you cannot relax fully because relaxation is conductive. And by the way, lots of Wi-Fi and Bluetooth is literally the electrical opposite of relaxation because you cannot implode in their presence, literally. So if the person you've got a very peaceful environment and the person is relaxed and taking a deep breath, then almost any person is going to get some benefits, really.
Right.
And your skill as the therapist, you need to get that person to feeling relaxed and safe so that they can then be conductive and therefore implode. That's a good start in your beautiful
Actually,
question.
I can speak to that. Yesterday they were putting me through some of these, like had me lie down in the red light, and they put me between the two plasma, forgive my terminology or lack thereof, the two plasma balls. And I had no idea that they were on. So I was lying there with my cell phone and I'm just looking, scrolling, just doom scrolling, not paying attention. And she says to me, how are you feeling? Can you feel that? And I was like, oh, it's on. I didn't realize that. And as soon as she said it and I like really understood that it was happening, immediately my left leg started tingling. And so I was like, it's either placebo or I was not allowing it to, like, I wasn't doing exactly what you said. I wasn't receiving or letting myself feel safe or doing any of the things intentionally. So when I had that, when she gave me sort of access to that, and I realized I should allow it immediately. Like the second she said it, I was like, oh, I feel it in my left leg. And then I kept getting these tingly, like chill feelings for the rest of the 15 minutes that they had me in there.
I
That's
feel like
lovely.
that goes back with the mindful energy field of, of the plasma spheres themselves.
Yes, and the fact that the rose is inviting you, but only you can choose to fall into it.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, if there's somebody who walks in who is not necessarily aware of, what they're about to receive, I was wondering if maybe the environment would start organizing around them, just naturally drawn to that relaxation mode of being accepting, or if there's still going to be a, willful fight a bit. But in my experience here, which has been a few weeks, mainly the people that leave feeling some sort of difference or relief, or at least a bit of a different mental state, being lighter, they're very intentional about focusing on, no phones in the bed,
Yeah,
they're here for healing. So that's what
yeah,
they're going to leave with. But
yeah,
yeah, other than that, it's hard to see the exact changes in people, or if,
yeah.
any.
And also that would help, a circle of plants or sacred stones, anything living, sacred, biologic, kind of the magic altar. Even Zarifa there, she's surrounded by wood and natural material and plants. That sort of environment, because then the whole area begins to breathe charge.
What about
Dan,
the fact that the app, sorry, I
no,
was
go
just
ahead,
going to ask,
Zarifa. Go ahead.
sorry, what if the fact that the app, we're on our phones on the frequency table and it is running on Bluetooth? Is there any thoughts
Yes.
about that?
Well, the Bluetooth is really a problem, and my suggestion is you need it for a short. First of all, you want to put that phone, as far away on the other side as possible, actually, and you want to turn it off as soon as you're done with it. Uh, and there are devices that convert that Bluetooth into. Patrick has options there,
But you're
but
changing the tables every 6 minutes.
yes. Fortunately, the field is strong enough to overcome, but still, we
Oh,
recommend turning the Bluetooth off when you're done with it. It's true. That is a
oh
point.
yeah, I do.
And,
I do.
and
Yeah,
we're researching that because the Bluetooth itself, unfortunately, is a very dense, short square wave, which is highly not good, unfortunately.
I
And
see.
these kids with Bluetooth devices in their earphones,
Yeah,
very bad news. Very bad news.
I know.
I can feel I bought some like soundproof head and I can't even wear them anymore. I can feel it I'm very sensitive and I can
No,
just
that,
feel it.
yeah, and it's like there's some kind of plot to make our planet soulless. You got how many billion kids wearing Bluetooth, and they will never lucid dream with those things on.
Yeah.
Even hours a day with those things on, lucid dreaming is gone. Where's the souls of our kids? We got a problem.
Dan, can
Yeah.
I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Just a quick question. Just trying to process the wealth of information you have. And one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking about AI and kids needing to know they have a soul, well, I was just thinking like we all have vision, right? We all have eyes. We might not know about the optic nerve and, every minute part of the eyeball, but we still have it, we still use it. So we might not know the physics behind a soul. I never did. But I have a soul. I recognize that. I'm aware of it and I honor that. So what does it mean you have to know the physics of the soul in order to retain and hold on to your soul?
Well, the principle of how a soul is created is literally uh, permission to plasma implode. So the reason that Bluetooth and Wi-Fi literally destroys the soul of the kids, measurable in destroying their lucid dreaming and their clairvoyance, is that square wave does not permit charge collapse. So if we don't soon begin to teach the scientists on our planet what the physics of soul is, we're going to completely overwhelm the planet with the soulless technologies made by soulless people who don't know what a soul is. That's why I say it is essential to know what the physics of soul is, because we cannot make the necessary choices in the face of a flood of oncoming AI unless we understand some of that physics. The kids need to know how that Bluetooth is destroying their soul. They need to know that science. Yes.
Right, right. I see. Okay, I got that.
And
Thanks.
Dan, would you say going with that, part of that is putting them in a conducive environment to promote and grow that soul energy, that whole thing, which would be being out in nature, being in and around trees, grounding, all that, being in those fields that are conducive for the generation of, the energy of the soul.
The Schumann, yes, yes. So
Schumann, right.
you take any group of kids that's having problems and you get them for a week out in nature with no electrosmog, only nature and walking barefoot on land. Any group of kids, it's completely transformative. Even like in Finland, when they realized once they took the shoes off and the kids could ground, it would revolutionize the entire educational process. Hello.
Wow.
I remember being a kid and just I would be so overwhelmed, emotionally, just being a sensitive person and, if you don't have sensitive people surrounding you that understand that sensitivity, sometimes, especially for children, I feel like you can be more misunderstood. But I remember always just needing to lay on the ground, inside my house, outside. I always needed to ground and I didn't understand, the science or the physics behind it at the time. My body just knew what it needed to do to, kind of self-soothe. And I feel like, especially now with technology, kids are losing that natural ability to understand, you know what I mean, what's going on in our connection to nature.
Yeah, it reminds me, the other day I saw this amazing ad for these grounding blankets. Well, the ad starts out with his parent who had this baby who would constantly was crying loudly all the time. And the only time that baby ever stopped crying is if you were standing barefoot in the grass. And so actually that baby.
So my baby she would only stop crying if we went outside. And I was barefoot because I never really.
Exactly.
I was stuck
That
inside
baby
forever,
was
so I didn't wear shoes. Get dressed.
exactly. That baby
only
was
time she
telling
stopped.
us something very important. Get the hell out of the Bluetooth metal cage, or your babies aren't going to make it. Hello.
You know
Well,
what's
yeah, and they have
interesting, Dan?
statistics. Oh.
Oh, that woman was actually a medical professional.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
and when she figured out that the grounding and holding the baby, she's like, oh, gee whiz, I don't know if I really want to ruffle the feathers of the medical industry. I think I'll just keep this to myself. But later she transitioned from the medical practice that she had and got more into, helping kids and doing that because it was literally like you said, the minute she grounded, the baby instantly stopped crying. And after a week or a month or two or whatever, she finally figured out there's something to this. And that was the grounding.
And there's that famous movie. It's called The Beautiful Green. It's about this primitive culture on another planet. And the story of that movie was the ultimate source of energy, literally energy for the whole culture was babies.
Hmm.
Wow. Dan, one last thing I'd like to finish up, then I want to give everybody a chance to ask some final questions. Since we're on the subject of grounding, how important is grounding after using Phiray and after using Plasma Fire and the technology? I know, technically, we just got some snow here today, and we do have some grounding technology here. But how important is that? Because I know Danielle yesterday, she went into Phiray and she, this is her first time in there, and I did not ground her after she was done, and I think she was, carrying a lot of extra dancing music in the cells, but
Sleep last night.
Yeah.
I was like,
a buzz. Yeah, she was buzzing.
So
I've also
yes, she was buzzing.
I was thinking I should start doing it in the morning instead of in the evening.
That's true. We say this is great for wakefulness, but it's not really good for sleep. Well, the physics here is that, yes, you have absorbed spin. Now, if that spin does not come into phase lock with the array called grounding, it's like actually it's a name for access to the Schumann phase conjugate pump wave, which is the mind of Earth, literally Gaia. And so if you don't get phase discipline with respect to the larger mind of Gaia, then that spin may drive you nuts. It will lose centering force. And the practical reality is, something so simple as washing your face with good cold water does 90% of the job, actually, because suddenly the whole thing, your body comes into phase, or any kind of touch with water or touch with earth. There's 1,000 ways to do it, but it's really true that, actually, if the therapist is in touch with the plasma field a lot during the day, should, alternate with doing something with water every, half hour, an hour. You wash your face, go out.
Figured that out, I think,
Yeah.
the hard way. Not the hard way, just the very interesting way.
It's water's so much, because the center of water, that hydrogen is perfect conjugator, man. So
Yeah.
if you got some living water and you play with that for just a couple of minutes, you're set.
So take walks around the building outside,
Yeah,
and
touch the
I
earth.
just kind of touch everything I see. And most of the time I come in here, I'm barefoot, but it's snowing today, so I'm not. But
Yeah,
but yeah,
and
one
notice
day
that
then it was a different experience for me because I was wearing shoes all day and my feet didn't ever
Nope.
touch the ground. I was up all night.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. If you didn't get grounded all day. And by the way, when you're outside wanting to touch everything you see, what you're wanting to touch is everything nature, high dielectric. And what you're not wanting to touch is everything metal, because
Just the
touching metal
leaves
does
and the
not
dirt,
help.
you know.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, touch the dirt, but don't touch the cars.
Mhm.
Hold on, probably.
Yeah.
Touch the
So
grass.
with that being said, Zarifa, Dan, by the way, I'm just introducing Zarifa. She's going to be out with us next week, and she's going to be joining us on a lot of podcasts and jumping in and having fun with us on a more permanent level here as we go. But Zarifa, before we wrap up this podcast today, do you have any final questions or anything you'd like to share with Dan or ask?
Well, just two little questions is just listening to what, okay, I'm sorry, Danielle is on this side, and then,
Yeah.
and then you're Nicole. So Nicole mentioned it's better to use it during the day, the plasma energy spheres, as opposed to before you go to sleep.
I think that's correct. I believe that's
Okay.
right. Yes.
And the other thing is, why are there so many choices for the foot?
There's
Yeah.
so many. I think that's the most bones. I don't know
frequencies.
if that has anything to do with it.
Yeah, it is. Well, the foot is sort of like the hand. If you want to wake up inside a lucid dream, why do you need to look at your hand? Well, the reason is because the map of your hand on the homunculus on the inner brain is huge. And so it's the keynote of self-reference. So when you look at your hand inside a dream, you tighten the do loop, and that implosion is called dream lucidity. Well, your foot is sort of like that. That would be
Very
a beginning of
interesting.
yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Well, thank you.
Reflexology kind of thing. Yep.
Well, like I've been saying to Sean, this is like a game changer, a life changer. I'm so you've changed people's lives. And I said my mom's getting one, my sister's getting one, and my brother's getting one, just for starters. So there's going to be many more.
We need to thank Patrick and plasmafire.com. He was so noble. And the nice thing is it's more economic than some of the other devices as well. So that's great. Super.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. Thank you. Thanks
Thank
to them
you.
too.
Yes.
And Sean
Awesome.
and everybody out there.
Yeah. Abby, any final words or anything you'd like to ask Dan before we go?
I don't know if I have any other questions. I'm just really grateful to have this opportunity. One, to, meet you in the face versus just over the email, but also to just tap in, like Zarifa said, to your wealth of knowledge that you have. It just in coming up with this kind of thing, obviously co-collaborating for some of it, but it's really impressive just, how immensely smart that you are and just all the knowledge that you hold.
Well, careful, my head gets so big it doesn't go through the door. At least that's what my ladies. No, but the point is that it isn't about me being smart. It is about having discovered pure principle and making that shareable essentially for free. And so that we do have 500 films YouTube Dan Winter Fractal Field with 5 million views. And that's the reason they're there. They're free and they're for you. And that's the point. And it's all based on one simple, pure principle, is how implosion creates this self-organization and this bliss. So thank you for appreciating, and let's make this a shareable wave. Thank you, Abigail.
Yes.
What a
Danielle, do you have any
great
final
twinkling
words?
smile.
I'm throwing you on the spot.
No, I'm processing. This has all been like you said, it's like another language, a complete and total paradigm shift, honestly. Like a lot of this stuff is new to me, but as somebody who is a little skeptical just by nature, it's interesting to hear you say things that resonate. Like I've always been a very lucid dreamer. I also am I walk on the beach almost daily. I'm very in touch with nature. So I feel like it makes sense, everything you're saying. It was happening organically in my life without doing it intentionally. But now it's adding a lot of credibility to where I would like to be skeptic just by nature. So it's
And
been really
I see,
interesting to sit back and listen to all of this.
I see your Cherokee ancestors liking this.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I could see that as well. I wish, you know a lot more about the Cherokee heritage than I do, which is unfortunate. But my great grandfather, what I knew of him was that he was Cherokee and he was 6'6".
Oh yeah, that's right. And and this is what the return of the Burb tribes was. These were the tall. They called it the Adawi, the star elders of the Cherokee. You might research Dahani Wahu's work on the Cherokee. Then thank you.
Yeah,
Nice to meet you. And that's a great smile, also.
Yes. And Dan, the beauty of it all, like when I was explaining everything to Danielle, even though there's a lot of terminology and a lot of information to process, especially when you're getting all this kind of new, the fundamental thing to understand is that everything that's being done is being done 100% based on physics. There's 100% science behind every single thing that's happening. There's no hyperbole. There's no what ifs. It's all 100% based on physics. And so what you're really just trying to do is understand the physics of how it's actually working, but to know that this is not randomly things being put together. There's, like, on all the websites that you've got, all the formulas and all the research and all the data is all compiled so beautifully. And the other thing I want to just follow up with what Abigail said is that, imparting all this amazing knowledge is the greatest gift. But the beauty about it, Dan, is that it's done with love and compassion. I always tell people, when you're learning something, if you're in school and you have to learn it, it's painful. Yeah. When you're like a little kid that's going, that's thirsty, going for water, and you just can't wait to learn more, you just run and absorb it, and it's fun and it's entertaining. And that quest that you've got to really give out that knowledge and that information, to help the world become a better place, to help kids have souls, to help do people with healing. And I always like to just reiterate, this is all these technologies are about enhancing your life where you're at right now, body, mind, spirit. And obviously we get people that come in here that have health issues, but the goal is to not have health issues. The goal is to experience the energy and stay healthy into the late years of your life and cross the finish line, running and not breaking down along the way and having all these different issues, but then also being able to embrace all the gifts that we've sort of been tuned out of, which is the clairvoyance, which is the empathy, which is all intuition and lucid dreaming, and bringing all that back so that that's a prominent part of your spirituality, and transforming out of the third dimensional body reality and coming back to the reality that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So, it's not just the knowledge, it's how you're giving it out and the heart and soul behind it in such a loving and compassionate way. So, just to kind of go a little bit further, because I've been so blessed to be able to spend time with you and to be able to embrace this tech. And I'm so grateful beyond words, as you know, which I try to express as best as I can every time we're together. So thank you for all of that. And Nicole actually has two. How old are your babies?
7 and 5.
7 and 5. So,
wow.
You've got Danielle, who's just getting, introduced to the technology. You have Zarifa that's, midway through using it and seeing a lot of benefits. You have Abigail and who's also been able to use it. But we've got all these different peoples at different levels of experience and understanding that are all getting introduced to it. And I thought today this would be absolutely beautiful because, for the average person that's out there that might just be hearing about this, understanding what it does, how it does, and seeing, the different levels of progression as you start absorbing the knowledge and understanding it at a deeper level. Ultimately, you're living a healthier, happier life. That's really the goal.
Boy, nobody could have said it better, Sean. You're wonderful, and by the way, and the team around you is so beautiful as well. It's all
Yes.
so wonderful. One last thought regarding the core science behind all of this. So that core science, originally plankfire.com, is now fractalgut.com, Fractal Grand Unified Theory. FractalGUT.com is now the #1 grand unified field physics on the planet, rated by Grok for the top physics AI on the planet. And it's literally this lesson of charge collapse, which is what makes negentropy, healing, ensoulment, bliss, and the cause of gravity and consciousness and life force, and the reason seeds germinate, and the reason pyramids make global wireless power, pyramidwirelesspower.com. It is all about learning what makes charge collapse. Physics already knew charge collapse is the cause of gravity and consciousness, but they didn't know the cause of charge collapse. We have answered that question. Planck times integer multiples of golden ratio, called fractality perfected, makes that implosion. And that's the frequency signature behind everything we do. And that physics of charge collapse is now undisputed #1 unified field physics on the planet, having answered the question why objects fall to the ground and how consciousness forms as a vortex inside your head. It is about charge collapse, and that's what the plasma is about. So I'm just saying that if you have science people around you and they would like to ask some questions, tell them to look at fractalgut.com. And if they're a physics professor in university, they should fall off their chair.
Wow. Woo! Yay!
Well, Dan, I mean, I don't want to bring this in, but I just have to say this was what Einstein could not figure out, is where the charge went from gravity and how gravity worked. And you figured that out. And then, as you so eloquently said earlier, when Antoine Curie was working on all these different things and he was trying, and he didn't realize he was working with golden mean frequencies, and you looked at that and dialed that in. And why Nikola Tesla couldn't get free energy, because he was at 50 instead of 60.
He was at 60 instead of 50.
That 50 was instead of 50.
And then he was running around on the lawn trying to pick up wireless power, and he was not putting the transducers at the longitudinal nodes, which are fractal. So he had the frequencies wrong and the nodal locations wrong. So obviously he couldn't make global wireless power, which pyramidwirelesspower.com explains perfectly. And by the way, having chosen 60 cycle, a huge mistake, means America will never make nanotech like carbon nano, because carbon nano grows like a rose the same way consciousness cannot happen in a plant made with 60 cycle. No, can only happen in a plant made with 50 cycle, called golden ratio times Planck, 50 hertz, the most commonly mentioned frequency in all the cancer healing literature, 50 hertz, not 60. So because Tesla did not know that, he could not make global wireless power. Why is that important? Because that's the global grid called collective consciousness.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Wow.
God, I love ending on an exclamation point like that. That's awesome.
Thank you, Sean. This has been great fun.
Dan, it's always great to see you. Take care, and we'll look forward to catching up with you again. I am going to connect you with Zarifa, and perhaps at another time next week or the week after, we could just do maybe a 20 or 30-minute video on ways to enhance fertility, because as I said, her daughter is desperate, trying to have a baby. And I told her that, probably not going to happen on a full moon. There's probably some things that are not conducive perhaps for enhancing pregnancy, but maybe we could just do something on that and talk about the physics of that, and perhaps things that young people can do, because I think that there's obviously things introduced within our society that are reducing the fertility and the ability to get pregnant. But, we can save that for another call in the future.
It's interesting. Our friend who teaches biologic architecture, Michael Rice, he makes implosion in buildings, biologic architecture, and he says that one of the most common results is people get pregnant. Well, actually, pregnancy is related to the ability to relax perfectly, which requires a fractal field. And that the group in South Africa that so successfully used Therify at that time, now it would be Phiray, in birthing, did say exactly that. There was a dramatic aid in helping with the relaxation effect. So it's which is ability to implode. So, and that, by the way, how does the sperm fertilize the egg? It delivers a spark gap which teaches the egg to dimple and thus turn inside out, called fertilization. Implosion is the first move you ever made.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
See how
Wow.
that all cycles back?
It all circles.
It all circles
Wow,
back.
fascinating.
It always
Dan, we
does.
could not have said it better ourselves the way you say it all.
That's called that's called identify. We identified. That sperm made its dent in the world.
That is
Awesome.
good. That is good.
Dan, we love you dearly. It's great to see you again. I will send you a copy of this right away so you
Great,
can post
great.
it, and then we'll catch
Wonderful.
up again and talk soon.
We're all a shareable wave. Blessing, guys.
Yes, we are.
Nice to
Take
meet
care.
you.
Have
It's
a
an
great
honor.
weekend.
Thank
Goodbye,
you
everybody.
all.
Call me anytime. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.